Welcome back to Carneades.org. Today we're going to be continuing our series, Dumbfounding Definitions, Dizzying Distinctions, and Diabolical Doctrines, a series sorting through some of the jargon of philosophy. In this video, we're going to be doing a special voting edition, What is the Paradox of Voting? Also known as Downs' Paradox. Now, the paradox of voting, also known as Downs' Paradox, asks whether or not it is rational to vote at all. As we approach an important election in the United States, where many voters are considering not voting at all, I think that this is an important topic to look into. Downs' paradox challenges the claim that it is rational for a self-interested individual to vote for the purpose of changing an election. Before we dig into this, I want to kind of unpack self-interested for a second. I'm not talking about just someone that is kind of egotistical, only looking out for themselves, but rather someone whose benefits within self-interested include that maybe you want us to live in a more equal society. You want our whole society to be better defended, even if you maybe have enough cash to defend yourself. Self-interested is talking about the things that you want, not necessarily things that are just good for you. So you could want people who are far away from you to be better off or to have access to more services. And just because that isn't directly affecting you, that's not saying it's not in your self-interest to get those things, because you're getting the happiness benefit of feeling like you were a part of making that good thing happen. So, with that out of the way, let's formulate Downs' paradox. And it can be formulated as a contradiction between the following kind of intuitive propositions. So, it is rational and good for your self-interest to vote. This is a very intuitive notion. We think that it's rational and it's good for our self-interest. It's something that would in some way benefit us in order to vote. Someone that is rational and self-interested will not take actions for which the costs outweigh the benefits. And remember, benefits are being construed as not just personal benefits, but the personal benefit in the sense of the happiness that you get from maybe being a part of something that caused something good to happen. But the claim of Downs' paradox that is going to turn this around the other way is that the costs of voting do outweigh the benefits. So 3 and 2 are going to show us that in fact P1 is not true, that it is not rational and good for your self-interest in order to vote. Now, premise 2 we're going to leave. It seems generally uncontroversial. You might argue about my definitions of rational and self-interested, but we'll set that aside. If we can offer a justification for premise 3, the paradox will be successful in undermining the common notion that it is rational and self-interested to vote. Now, the argument in support of 3 might go as follows. So we can estimate the benefits of a particular action by multiplying the probability of that action causing the particular change by the difference of the benefits that would be received if that change were enacted and the costs if that were not to be enacted. If those math words are confusing to you, we're going to look at an actual example in just a second. But even if a particular candidate winning would provide one with a very, very high benefit, because the odds of any one person's vote being decisive are astronomically small. That means that the election has to be exactly tied, and the fact that you voted was the thing that decided it. The benefits of the action of voting are reduced practically to zero. Because in all the possible worlds where the election doesn't come down to just one vote, you voting didn't matter. The cost of actually voting is higher than next to nothing, which is the only benefit you're going to get, or the only benefit based on you taking that action that you would get, such as the cost of missing a few hours at work, time with the family, etc. Therefore, the cost of voting is higher than the benefits. So, a rational, self-interested person would not vote. Because the chances of a large election coming down to a single vote are next to nothing, the benefits will be drastically watered down. Let's take a look at an example to kind of understand exactly what we're talking about here. So imagine that one candidate would give you personally $1 million if they win, and the other candidate would take $1 million from you personally if they won. It might seem that you would be rational to vote. In fact, in this situation, you would be very, very rational to vote. It makes sense. This is going to very much directly affect your life. But the odds of an election only being decided by one vote are so small, let's say 1 in a million, that your expected benefit is still probably going to be less than the small cost of voting. So what we would do is we take that 1 in a million chance, that's the probability of the election being decided by your one vote, times $1 million, which would be the benefit to you if your candidate wins, minus the negative $1 million, so we would actually add those together to get $2 million, which is your expected losses if your candidate loses. And you still only end up with gaining $2 from that. Now you might say, well, maybe there's more expected benefits. Maybe my friends would also get $1 million and that would give more benefits to me. But the point is, you can build this up and build this up, but you're still not going to have that much of an expected benefit because 1 in a million is still a pretty high chance for the probability of the election being decided by only one vote. So, does this mean it's irrational to vote? That no one should vote? That sounds really troubling, because if all the rational people were convinced of that position, then our politicians would be chosen only by irrational people. And though a lot of people might think that's the case now, that seems troubling if that's the conclusion we've reached. The other option, though, is that our rationale for voting is not to be the decisive vote, and actually be the one that makes the change or tips the election one way or the other, but in fact to do something else. There are two responses to this paradox that we're going to look at, the mandate theory of voting and the expressive theory of voting. So, the mandate theory of voting argues that the reason that you should vote is to increase the mandate of your candidate or decrease the mandate of the other candidate. Such an argument has been made in the current American election. We need to give Clinton a huge win to denounce Trump's behavior. Or, we should make Clinton's margin smaller if only to stop her future legislation. Basically, the larger the win percentage, the better argument the candidate has to get legislation through with the approval of the voters. Or, we have outwardly denounced particular actions or activities because we've given the other candidate a large margin. Or promoted particular actions or activities because we've given that candidate a large margin. While each individual vote may have a wildly low chance of being the deciding vote in an election, there will certainly either contribute to expanding the mandate of their chosen candidate or shrinking the winning margin of the other candidate. However, there are concerns, such as whether mandates actually do help initiatives through, and whether, even if the benefits are greater than the chance of being the decisive vote, they're probably less than the cost of voting. Because the mandate, slightly increasing the mandate, probably isn't going to really do that much. So the benefits may still be less than the cost. So let's look at another idea. Another possible solution is that we vote in order to express particular opinions or views to others, in the same way that one might wear the jersey of their favorite team or put up posters of their favorite band. Voting may be private, but we do so in order to talk about it, to put ourselves in groups of people who have similar beliefs, and to put off a certain image. Being tough by supporting candidates that are militarily heavy-handed. If you support those kind of more hawkish candidates, you are seen by others as a tougher person. Or putting off the image of being tolerant by supporting candidates from minority or underprivileged groups. You send off signals to other people based on the people you are voting for. So you're not really doing it to actually influence the election. You're doing it with the purpose of expressing your opinions and putting yourself in a group of people that have similar views to you. Frankly, it seems to me that in reality, people vote for a combinations of these reasons and more. We vote for impact because even if there's such an astronomically small chance of us being the single vote, we would feel horrible if we did not and the election was decided by a single vote, no matter how unlikely. Or extremely proud if our vote was that one decisive vote that made it so one candidate won over another. And the possible guilt one would need to live with by not voting in such a situation could outweigh the cost, even if that situation were extremely unlikely. We want our candidate to win by a huge margin, even if that mandate will not get them anything, if only to restore our own pride in our country. We want our country to be seen as a place that expresses our opinions and our views and our values. So if there's a candidate that doesn't represent those views and values, we want it to seem like that candidate didn't win in a landslide, or that candidate was trounced soundly. And we want to express our opinions, but beyond that, we want to try to convince others to act as we do. By talking about and expressing our opinion, we also increase our impact and mandate by convincing those around us. By being a vocal supporter of a particular candidate, you are very likely to convince those people that are around you to also support that candidate. In order to convince someone to vote, you should probably show them that you do it yourself. Even if you actually vote in private, people want to see you doing that. And the more people in their peer group they see doing that, the more likely they are to do it. If you convince 10 people, for example, it is that much more likely that the election will be decided by 10 people instead of 1. So your act of voting, and therefore convincing other people to vote, has in fact increased significantly, tenfold, in its impact. If those people go on to convince more people to vote, all the better. It seems to me that all of these motives contribute to the reasons that we vote. And most of them, put together, would seem to create benefits that outweigh the small cost of voting. As a skeptic, I do not know which candidate in the upcoming election will make the world better. Though I may suspend judgment and belief, I personally have not suspended action, even though I live in Africa. Therefore, in the hope of making an impact, avoiding guilt, increasing a mandate, and expressing my opinions, though it might lose me some subscribers, I'll tell you that I have voted for Hillary Clinton, and I hope you do too. Watch this video and more here at Carneades.org. Get out and vote, and stay skeptical, everybody.